I always knew Evelyn didn't like me. Not in the loud, dramatic way you see in movies. No, she was far too polished for that. Her words were polite, her tone soft, but her eyes? Her eyes said everything. They scanned me like I was a puzzle missing too many pieces. Most people thought she was charming, maybe just a little particular. But I caught the hesitation in her hugs, the way she corrected me when I wasn't even wrong. It was subtle, but constant, like a leak you don't notice until the floorboards start warping. When Nathan and I got engaged, I hoped things would shift. I thought, maybe now that I was officially going to be part of the family, she'd try. But instead, she slipped right into the center of our wedding planning, uninvited, but always happy to help. Every time she spoke, it was laced with sugar and steel. Simple ceremonies can be sweet, she'd smile, which of course meant too cheap. Or, Nathan's ex used to love classical music, just saying. I'd laugh it off, pretending I didn't hear what she really meant. But I did. I heard every word. And even when I smiled back, I felt the sting. Everyone said I was lucky to have such an involved future mother-in-law. I wasn't lucky. I was being studied, measured, and slowly picked apart. One backhanded comment at a time. I kept telling myself to rise above it, that I was marrying Nathan, not his mother. And for the most part, I believed that. He made me feel safe. He made me laugh when I wanted to scream. But every time Evelyn stepped into the room, it felt like I had to prove myself all over again, like I was auditioning for a role I'd already earned. I'd spent months trying to smooth things over, to be patient, to not give her a reason to turn Nathan against me. But no matter how hard I tried, her disapproval sat heavy in the air, like perfume that lingers long after someone's left. There were moments I'd catch her watching me, not kindly, not curiously, but like she was mentally rewriting the guest list and wishing I weren't on it. She never outright said I wasn't good enough, but her silences were loud, louder than her critiques, louder than her compliments, and yet I held it in, because part of me still wanted her approval. I know, it sounds ridiculous, craving validation from someone who clearly didn't want to give it. But when you love someone, you want to be loved by the people who raised them too, and that was the hardest part. Knowing that no matter how genuine I was, no matter how much Nathan loved me, Evelyn had made up her mind about me long before I walked through her door. I wasn't who she would have chosen. I was her son's reality, not her ideal. I tried not to let it consume me, I really did. I focused on the parts of wedding planning that brought me joy, the flowers, the playlist, that moment I found the dress. I surrounded myself with friends who reminded me of who I was, who saw me fully and without conditions. But even in those bright moments, Evelyn's presence crept in. A phone call here, a suggestion there, always wrapped in concern but dripping with disapproval. She didn't just want to shape the wedding, she wanted to reshape me. I started to notice patterns. She'd drop little comparisons, always about Nathan's past. Sophie used to make the best lemon cake. Nathan loved it. Or, Sophie never wore strapless dresses. She thought they lacked elegance. As if I were a placeholder, a downgrade, a shadow of someone she still wished was standing beside her son. I laughed along. What else could I do? Cause a scene? Be the difficult fiancé? No, I played the role, the gracious bride-to-be, the unbothered woman. But inside I was starting to ache. Because I thought I was marrying Nathan. I really did. I thought love was enough. But Evelyn didn't just come with the package. She had her own idea of what that package should look like. And she wasn't done shaping it yet. She said she just wanted to help. Evelyn showed up that afternoon with a tray of cookies and a notebook full of unsolicited suggestions. "You don't mind if I sit in, do you?" she asked, already halfway through the door. I smiled. What else could I do? I let her settle in while I tried to focus on centerpieces and seating charts. But every time I made a decision, she had a gentle correction. "You sure about burgundy? Nathan always liked navy. That table placement might block the view for the older guests." It wasn't support. It was surveillance. Hours passed. I kept the peace, kept breathing. Then, just as suddenly as she came, Evelyn stood up and said she had to leave. "Oh, I completely forgot I have a hair appointment. You don't mind if I run, do you?" She left with a kiss on the cheek and that ever-familiar smile that always felt more like a signature than a gesture. I watched her drive off, exhaled, and turned back to the cluttered dining room table. That's when I saw it. Her phone, sitting on the chair cushion, screen up. I didn't mean to look. I swear I didn't. But the screen lit up on its own, a message preview, just a name and a line of text. Sophie. Did he mention me? Do you think he still cares? My stomach flipped. Sophie. As in the Sophie. Nathan's ex. The one Evelyn couldn't stop referencing. I reached for the phone, hands trembling before I even realized I was holding my breath. I told myself not to open it, that it wasn't my place. But then again, what was my place anymore? I tapped the message, then another, then all of them. My eyes scanned the conversation, heart pounding louder with each word. Evelyn and Sophie had been talking for weeks, not just catching up, but plotting, coordinating. Evelyn had been coaching her on where to show up, what to say, even how to look. That bookstore on 7th, Nathan still goes there on Saturdays. Wear the green blouse. He always loved that one. I felt sick. These weren't passive mentions of the past. They were blueprints for sabotage. Evelyn hadn't just hoped I'd back out. She was actively setting the stage for someone else to take my place. There were messages about memories, regrets, accidental run-ins, and worst of all, Evelyn's encouragement. Remind him of who he was with you. He's just confused. Confused? No, Nathan wasn't confused. He was marrying me. We had a life together. Or so I thought. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't about me being good enough. It was about Evelyn never letting go of who she thought her son should have ended up with. It had never been about taste in music or ceremony choices or dresses. It was about control. And now I had the proof, sitting in my hands, glowing cold and cruel in the screen light. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, the weight of it so much heavier than it should have been. My mind raced, looping through every polite jab, every curated smile, every suggestion Evelyn had made under the guise of kindness. All of it clicked into place now. She hadn't just disapproved of me, she'd been actively trying to erase me, behind my back, in my own home, while smiling at me across my own table. And Sophie, she wasn't innocent either. Her texts dripped with familiarity, with a hope I hadn't realized was still alive. Do you think he misses me? Should I say hi if I see him? It wasn't desperation, it was strategy. Like they both thought if they played the game long enough, I'd fold. But I wasn't folding. Not now. Not after this. My wedding wasn't a battleground, and I sure as hell wasn't about to be a casualty. I knew I had two choices, confrontation or calculation. My blood boiled for one, but something deeper inside me whispered for the other. I didn't want to fight. I wanted clarity, truth, power. So I placed the phone on the table and exhaled, slowly, deliberately. Evelyn had left a trail, and I had just picked up the map. I didn't storm into a confrontation. I didn't scream or throw the phone or demand answers. Instead, I got quiet, focused. There's a certain kind of power in stillness, the kind that makes people uneasy because they don't know what you know. I started watching everything. Nathan's expressions, his schedule, even his little stories about the day. I listened not just to his words, but to the spaces between them. And slowly, things started to surface. One night, I asked casually, "Did you see anyone you knew at the bookstore last weekend?" His eyes flicked up, just for a second. Then he smiled. "Actually, yeah. Sophie, of all people. Weird, right?" I nodded, pretending I was just as surprised as he was. He told me it felt random, brief. She said hello and walked away. But I knew better. Because I had already read the message that told her exactly where to be and what to wear that day. But I wasn't ready to accuse him. Not yet. I needed to know if he was in on it, or just caught in the middle of someone else's plan. My heart wanted to trust him, but my gut was wary. So I played the part, the supportive fiancé, the trusting partner. All the while collecting pieces of a truth I hadn't asked for, but now couldn't unsee. I started testing boundaries in small ways, mentioning things Evelyn said, just to see how Nathan would react. Sometimes he defended her, other times he changed the subject. He looked tired lately, distracted, like something was pulling him in two directions. I knew that feeling. Because I was starting to live in that same split. One half of me clinging to the love we had built, the other half bracing for it to shatter. And still, I waited. Watched. Traced the lines between Evelyn's schemes and Nathan's responses. There was one morning, early before the sun had fully come up. Nathan was asleep beside me, breathing softly. I lay there, eyes wide open, wondering if I was making it all bigger than it was. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But then I remembered the messages, the lies masked as coincidence. The way Evelyn played puppet master with a woman she hoped would be my replacement. No, this wasn't in my head. This was engineered. So instead of confronting the chaos, I studied it. Like someone tracing the cracks in a dam, waiting to see which one would give first. I needed to know who Nathan really was, when he wasn't being guided, when Evelyn wasn't whispering. And I needed to be sure, before I stood in front of our families and said I do. In the quiet of those days, I found something I hadn't expected. Clarity. Not just about Nathan or Evelyn, but about myself. I wasn't the same woman who once believed love alone could fix everything. I was becoming someone sharper, steadier. I stopped trying to win Evelyn over. I stopped justifying her behavior to myself. Instead, I started writing down everything I knew, the dates, the messages, the patterns. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing for truth. Nathan, to his credit, never gave me a reason to doubt his loyalty directly. But that's what made it harder. He seemed sincere. He still reached for my hand at night, still called me his piece. And maybe he really was caught in the middle. Maybe he didn't see the storm building behind him. But that didn't mean I had to walk into it blind. I needed to know who was standing with me, and who was standing just close enough to watch me fall. So I made a choice. I wouldn't call off the wedding. Not yet. I wouldn't give Evelyn the satisfaction of thinking she'd won. But I also wouldn't let her keep rewriting the script. This was still my story. And if she wanted a performance, I'd give her one. The rehearsal dinner was beautiful. Warm lighting, clinking glasses, the gentle hum of conversation. Exactly what you'd imagine the night before a wedding should feel like. Everyone kept saying how perfect everything was. Evelyn beamed across the room like the proud matriarch, complimenting the flowers, hugging relatives she barely tolerated. I watched her, wondering how much of this evening she thought she had scripted. She looked so confident, so certain. I let her have it, for now. I stayed composed. I greeted guests, laughed at old stories, held Nathan's hand like it was any other celebration. No one knew what I knew. No one saw the pages of printed messages tucked neatly into the back pocket of my coat. Every step, every breath, was deliberate. And when it came time for the toast, I stood slowly, feeling my pulse steady with purpose. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I smiled at the room, really smiled. I thanked everyone for coming, spoke about love, commitment, and how lucky I felt. People nodded, glasses lifted. Then I turned toward Evelyn. She smiled at me, so sweet, so proud. And that's when I said it. Some people planned a wedding, others planned a reunion, one that didn't include me. The room went still, forks paused mid-air, and Evelyn's smile cracked. I let the silence settle, just enough to sting, not enough to suffocate. Then I reached into my coat and pulled out the folded pages, Evelyn's messages to Sophie printed in full. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. I simply walked over to Nathan and handed them to him. His brow furrowed as he read the first lines. Then his face changed, slowly, like the truth was unraveling in real time. By the second page, he wasn't breathing. By the third, he wasn't blinking. Evelyn stood up halfway, her chair scraping awkwardly against the floor. "This is being taken completely out of context," she began, voice tight. But there was no context left to manipulate. The words were hers, written, sent, plotted. The room wasn't confused, it was shocked, and I could feel every pair of eyes shifting from Nathan to Evelyn, then back to me. No one interrupted, no one knew how. Nathan looked up. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. And in that moment I felt it, the shift. Not just in the room, but in me. I wasn't the girl trying to earn a place at the table anymore. I was the table, and I had just pulled out the chair from under the woman who thought she could seat me where she pleased. I looked at Evelyn, really looked. Her lips trembled, her hands clutched the edge of the table as if it could save her from collapsing. For once, she had nothing to say. No polished reply, no sweetly veiled insult, no clever diversion, just the brittle echo of her silence. I turned back to Nathan. "You tried to pick his bride," I said, calm, steady. "But you're not the one he's marrying, or answering to." And I meant it, every single word. The room was dead quiet. No coughs, no whispered reactions, just the weight of realization pressing down on everyone like gravity had doubled. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stepped back, picked up my glass, and took a sip. Because when you speak the truth with grace, the impact lands harder than any scream. And this was mine. I didn't need an apology right then. I didn't even need an explanation. What I needed was space. And now, I had it. Because the silence that followed wasn't mine to break. It was Evelyn's. It was Nathan's. It was everyone else's who had smiled and nodded without seeing. But they saw now. Nathan found me outside after the dinner, quiet, hesitant, like he was approaching a stranger. He said my name softly, like it might break if he spoke it too loud. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear to you, Lara, I had no idea she was doing any of this." His eyes were pleading, full of panic and disbelief. And for the first time, I believed him. I could see it in his face. The shock was real. But it didn't change what I needed to ask next. "If you didn't know," I said, "why didn't you see it?" He blinked. "Why didn't you notice how she talks to me? How she's never really welcomed me?" My voice wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hoping someone else would call out what I'd been swallowing for months. "I needed you to protect me, not from the world, just from her." He started to speak again, but I held up my hand. "If you can't stand between me and your mother now, you never will." That's when I knew. Love wasn't enough. Not if it came with blind spots and hesitation. I looked at the man I was supposed to marry and saw someone who cared deeply, but didn't act decisively. And that's not what I wanted anymore. Not what I needed. So I made the call, the one I never thought I'd have to make. I didn't make a scene. No tears, no ultimatums, just a quiet, steady breath, and the truth. I told Nathan the wedding was off. Not because I didn't love him, but because I loved myself more. Because peace shouldn't require permission, and loyalty shouldn't be conditional. He begged me to reconsider. Promised to talk to Evelyn, to set boundaries, to fix everything. But his promises came too late. You can't rebuild a foundation after the storm if you never poured one in the first place. The next morning I packed up my things, not in anger but with intention. I left the dress hanging in the closet, left the place cards, the floral mock-ups, the carefully planned seating charts. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was that I'd found my voice, and finally used it. I walked out of the home we were supposed to share and into a life I would build for myself. One not filtered through Evelyn's judgment or Nathan's indecision. And honestly, it was liberating. There's a strange kind of freedom in calling off a wedding. People expect heartbreak, drama, chaos. But what I felt most was clarity. Not everyone gets to feel that before saying I do, I did. And I chose to say I won't. Months passed, and while the world kept asking questions I had no interest in answering, I moved forward. Quietly. Powerfully. I launched my own design business, something I'd put off for years while trying to blend into someone else's life. I traveled. I laughed again. I started waking up without that familiar tightness in my chest, the kind you don't notice until it's gone. Turns out, peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives, softly, like morning light through open windows. Then one evening I got the message. It was from Evelyn. Short, clipped, and, for once, stripped of elegance. "I regret how things unfolded. I hope one day you can forgive me. I'd like a second chance." I stared at it for a while, letting her words hang there, digital and desperate. Part of me thought I'd feel satisfaction, or maybe anger. But what I actually felt was distance. as if she no longer had access to the version of me who needed anything from her. So I replied with a single line. You had every chance. You just used them trying to erase me. No more, no less. Because the truth didn't need decoration. It stood just fine on its own. They tried to push me aside. I didn't just stay standing. I started walking forward, and I never looked back.